Okay, so we have a sugya of hatfasa. Hatfasa means when a person goes ahead, takes a neder, and instead of saying an outright neder, he goes ahead and makes the neder dependent upon something else. That something else has to be itself a dava haneder. Ish kiyida neder laHashem. We're going to see it on Daf Yudalid. Ish kiyida neder at sheyoda b'dava haneder. Until the neder is something itself, it's a neder. So we said yesterday, if a person would make a neder in what? In chazer, this piece of meat is also probably like chazer, it would not be a good neder, it would be muta. Because chazer, you didn't make chazer asa. Chazer is asa because God made it asa. Conversely, if you would have said that this piece of meat is asa to me like nicer or like pigel, then it would be what? It would be asa. I pigel the nicer, you can possibly say they themselves, the Torah asas, Hashem asad it. And the answer is, if you didn't make a carbon, then it won't be pigel v'noiser. The whole way to become pigel v'noiser, you had to be a carbon in the first place. So maybe it's a dava hanada, and therefore it would be asa. Today we're going to do a very interesting sugya today about a person who's matvis in a piece of meat of a shlamim. Okay, now you have a shlamim is a carbon, and the process of the carbon, any carbon went the following way. We're dealing with shlamim because it was the nedava that was eaten. The shlamim was the nedava and the eaten. The two primary carbonates that are nedavas are oila and shlamim, and oila never has a shas heter. Shlamim has a shas heter. When does the shlamim become mutter? So let's go through the process. You magdish an animal, it's now a shlamim. You go ahead, you bring it to the kohen. The kohen brings it on the mizbeach. He shechs the animal. Once he shechs the animal, he receives the blood in a kli. He takes that over to the mizbeach. That's called halacha, and then he does zrika. As soon as zrika happens, two things happen. One, the person has been yotze his chiyuv of the neder. No longer is he have to bring another carbon. And secondly, the meat now is mutter ba'achila. So if a person goes ahead and his matvis goes ahead and says this piece of meat should be like a carbon shlamim, right? What's the halacha? What's the halacha? It should be like a carbon shlamim. What's the halacha? Is pshat that he's being matvis in the shlamim itself before the zrika when it's a carbon and it will be asr, or do we say no? Do we say that he's matfis in a la'achas zrika, and after zrika it's mutter? So that's the question. What do you mean by saying zivchei shlamim? That's again along the way. It's really a kach sugya. There are a lot of ideas and ideas along the way. So listen, I'll get back and I'll be clearly as possible. But if you get a little lost, there's always the tape. says the Mishnah Torah, v'tamei noiser v'pigel v'as. It will be us on Yud Aleph on the base, about 6 lines up. Boy, Rabbi Bar had the following shaila. You say you're matfis that this piece of meat should be like the meat of a carbon shlamim. La'achas rikas damim, after the zrika. Now mahu. Idika amar behadein lishna behateru matfis. If he says it should be like this piece of meat after the zrika, then it's mutter. After zrika, you're able to eat the meat of a shlamim, no problem. So if a person says this piece of meat should be like the zivchei shlamim after zrika, what's Rami Bar Chama Shaila? There is no tzad isser to say that it's usser. It's clearly mutter. It's clearly mutter because everyone can go ahead and eat right afterwards. It's not a problem. Ella, what must the case be? Kigoin, the machis basa zivchei shlamim. You take a piece of shlamim meat and you take a piece of regular meat. And you say this one should be like this one. Now, the ikroi komatvis, is he going in the ikra that it's a shlamim and it's aser? Is he being matvis in the carbon itself? If he's being matvis in the carbon itself, then it would be aser. After all, it's a shlamim. Or is he going ahead and he's making subject to the heter? That's the side of the shaila. What do you look at? Do you look at what it was, or do you look what it is now? Do you go meikara or do you go basahashta? If you go meikara, you're going back to what it was once. Then it's a carbon. If you go what it is now, then it's basa v'heta. So you didn't go ahead and say I'm matvis in a carbon shlamim after zrika. You didn't verbalize that. You had a piece of meat over here, a piece of meat over here, and you said zek is zek. We look at this piece of meat and we say, 1 second, this piece of meat, there's two tzadim to this piece of meat. There's a tzad that it should be asa because it's a carbon, and a tzad that it's mutter because now it's mutter ba'achila. That's the shaila according to the Gemara. So Toshma, come in here. Amar Rabba, says Rabba, Toshma, come in here from our Mishnah. And that's we can push the Shaila from our Mishnah. What does the Mishnah say? Noiser u pigel. You have Noiser and pigel, right? Now, Noiser is right now, it was a carbon, and now it's Noiser. If you go what it was, then it should be what? It should be, I mean, you're going after what it is now. In other words, either way, it's no good. But l'chayra, v'hanoiser pigul achas rikas damim hu. Nois and pigul is after this rika, and nonetheless, you don't say you go back to what it was as a carbon. Again, if you look at noiser is a carbon that's left out overnight. Any carbon that's left out overnight of its particular time. In other words, if it's a shlamim, it's after 2 nights, after a chatos and asham, or a toy that's 1 night. Then what it is, it's asa. So you're telling me right now, noiser, you're saying it's asa. Why is it asa? It must be because you're going what it is now. Memela in our shaila, if you have the piece of meat in front of us, it will be mutter. Because you go after what the shlamim, what it is now, which is after this rika. If it's after this rika, it's mutter. So let's be paishe from pigul and noiser. We're speaking about what? The noiser of an oila. We're speaking about what? The noiser of an oila. An oila never has what? A shas. Even if you go back to now, right, or before, it doesn't make a difference. It'll be usher either way. There is no tzad heta to what it was. We're speaking about the noiser of an oila. So even if you're going after noiser of an oila, so in Cain listening bibasa oila. So if that's the case, why did you just leave it up in the air? Why did you say what? Basa oila. Says, well, let me buy kamar. You didn't need to tell me. Let me buy basa oila the asa, the hubby carbon kamatfis, the basa of an oila. You're going in the carbon and it's asa. Noisu pigel the oila it's richa. The chiddush is noisu pigel the oila. Salka that haminan kiissa noisa kiissa pigel. Bavele can be mafis bedavar asa v'lay mitzvah kamash mulan. Outside, guys. Outside. Could you view noisa like a piece of chaza? Could you view noisa like a piece of chaza? Now what? The Torah says if you eat chaza, you get malchus. The Torah says if you eat noiser, you get karis. Good. In other words, we could view noiser as not something that came about the isser of because of a neder. We could view noiser possibly what as it itself is usser. What's our rule of thumb in hatfasa when you compare one to another? If in your comparison you're comparing it to something that innately itself is usser, not because of you, because of a neder, it's a mutter because you weren't matfis in something that self is usser. So I can easily say that pigel and noiser, they themselves are asa. The chiddush is that since they come as a result of a carbon, the chiddush is that they're not a davar asa. The isser of noiser pigel came because a neder began the process. Meaning, really, it's a davar another. The Torah says it's asa. The Torah says my carbon that's left overnight is asa. The Torah throws it on you, right? But not that I didn't make it. Kamash Malon, you made it. In other words, 2 ways to look at it. I could look at it that it's like the Torah asked it the same way, or I say no, that I made it, and then the Issa came into place. So again, I think it's a very dakistic chilik. It's a dakistic chilik, but I think it's very geschmack. Says, let's see. Okay, I don't know. I can explain. Let me explain it one more time. Let me try to do a little better job. There never was a time where chazer is mutter. From the time a pig is born, it's a pig. And the Torah says you can't eat it. 0, you cannot eat this. Good? When an animal is born, a kosher animal, as long as you shech the animal, it's mutter. This animal stands to be mutter. What do you do to create the issa? You say, harezu, this animal is a carbon. You created the issa. You then, at a later point in time, another issa came into place. What was that issa? Noiser upigel. But 1 second, there can't be noiser upigel without you putting the ball in motion of the carbon. Memela, it remains a davar hanadar and not a davar asa. That's the chiddush of the Gemara. Let's see it in the words again. I went through it quickly.
Is it possible? It's even more. Besides the fact they asked it by making a carbon, he also, by his action or inaction, made it noser or pigel.
But again, the whole question is that's happening over here. Is this something that comes about because of me or because of the Torah? That's the shaila.
But it was because of you, because you made.
That's all I need. That's all I need to know. Once it's because of me, it's a davar another. And whatever transpires afterwards, the severity of it, you're right. But I have to know the Inyan Hilchas Nedarim, Masechtas Nedarim. Did I go ahead and be matfis? Did I compare this to something that would create an isser? Is it ish kiyida neder or not? So let's say the lashon of the Gemara again. Fred Gemara Kasha. If you tell me it's being a basar oila, the case of nicer, say an oila. Says more. Let me you tell me another chiddush over here. Let me boy basar oila the asa the hubby carbon matfis. That's pashit. That what you created the isser. An oila is a carbon. Nicer pigel the oila it's stricha. The chiddush is nicer pigel of an oila. Because salkadai chaminon ki isa. Be'isa noisa, ki'isa pigel, v'havile kimafis bedava asur. I might think the isra of noiser and the isra of pigel is being mafis in a pig. I might think it's just like a pig. The pig is, the Torah says the pig is asa. The Torah says nice is asa. The Torah says pigel is asa. V'loi mitzur, and therefore your neder should not be a good neder and it should be muta. Kimash malon, that what? The noiser, pigel, in itself is a dava another. That's the finish. Okay? So we weren't paishet the shaila. We tried and we weren't paishet the shaila. Okay, Yamatza shaila. Do you go after the here and now, what it is now, after this Rika, or do you go back before? Meisive. Now, I have written on the side of my Gemara something fascinating. You know, I'm always pointing out to you that the lashon of Nedarim is Mishuna. It's different than other Masechtas, correct? We pointed out to other places. Here's the third place. Meisive is you're asking a kasha. Meisive is you're asking a kasha. There's no kasha. You're coming to answer one side of our question in hand. Do you go after what it is now or what it was before? So usually that's tashma. Guys, on the Amid base that we just said, Amarava, the bottom line. Tashma, come in here, and I'm bringing a Tanoic source to answer the question. Tashma, come in here, an answer to your question, to your query. Over here, Meisive, so the Shitim Gubetzis points out that this is just another example of Masechta Nedarim being different, because really it's not a Meisive, it's not a Kasha. Anyway, Ezeu Isahom B'Torah. When you have Hatfasa, Ish Kiyid Neder, Ad Shiyid B'Dava Hanadar, what exactly are we speaking about? In other words, this is like the first base of a Neder Al Yedei Hatfasa, a Neder that comes back through a comparison to something else. What exactly is that? Amar, Hareini, it's upon me. Shlei oichel basa, I won't eat meat. Ushlei eshte yayin, I won't drink wine. Kiyom shemes by aviv, like the day my father died. So you have a yard site. Your father dies the 1st of Nisan. 7 years have passed by. You never kept any of the 6 years as a yard site. You never kept it that it's usher. And now you're saying this meat and this wine should be usher to me like the day my father died. So again, very important the way I set it up. You didn't say that every single year on the yard site you don't drink meat or drink meat, drink wine and eat meat. You didn't say that. You said the day 7 years later you made a neder should be like that day. Good. That's what you're saying. Kiyom shemes by Rabbi, like the day my Rabbi died. Kiyom shenerag by Gedalia ben Achikam. That's same Gedalia. Kiyom shereisi Yerushalayim b'Churbanah. So that's the hatfasa. Good. So in other words, if you would say that, it would be a good neder. Each one of those things are a dava hanada. Yom shemes aviv, Yom shemes Rabbi. The day Gedalia died, right? And all of these would be what a dava hanada. All these would be Shmuel. And that's provided he said the neder in that day. Hechidami, lav kegoin, dekoi b'chad b'Shabbos. It's the Sunday, the first day of Nisan. The meis be'avu that one's father had passed away. And you're saying that I should be usher on wine like this day. V'afagav the ikatuva, chad b'Shabbat the hetera. Guys, it had 6 years of days of the first day of Nisan where nothing was asa. Nothing was asa. In other words, your father was nifta, like Leilenu. One's father was nifta. Now you never ever kept it also that day, and now you're saying this day, this wine should be usher upon me like this day. Good. So if you didn't keep all of these, and you only kept this, why do you have a raya? L'chayr b'dahashta. Says the Gemara, "V'getoni asa shmamina be'ikahu matvis." That you're being matvis in the ikka. You're going back to the day your father died, not in the current, because currently it wasn't usher at all. Again, there's a long run over here. I'm saving us a lot of time. There's two possibilities over here. There's the havamina and there's the maskana. You know the maskana. The maskana is going to be that you always kept every single day of your father's death, the first day of Nisan that took place. Good. So here's the havamina of the Gemara. This is the day one's father passed away, and now you're making a neder. Every single year on your yard site, you never kept, you always drank wine, you always ate meat, no problem. Now you're saying, this should be usher upon me like this day. So obviously where you're going on, you're going bid the hashta, you're going bid in the ikka, you're being mafis, you're going back before. So too, when you say that this piece of meat should be usher like what? Like zivchei shlamim, it's usher, because you're going back, not to now that it's mutter to eat, you're going back to before. That's the way you want to be placed in the shaila. And this is the Gemara that's Gosses Hatfasa. This is, we'll see on the Gedalit, it's a sugi in Shulas Tav Chaf. This is the Ikka Gemara, guys. And what are we saying? This is Hatfasa. This is Asr. So why do you clearly see that you go back to the Ikka? That's the Gemara's. Let's see it again. Kigoyin dekoi b'chad b'shaba the meis be'avua. You're standing on that day. The afagav the ikatuva chad b'shaba the teira. Even though you have all the other days in between that you were muta for katani aser shmamina be'ikahu matvis. You're going back to the day itself. So too, you're going back to the carbon itself, and the zivkei shlamim should be aser. It should be a good atfas of an eder. And the Gemara, no. The Shmuel Hachiyatmar. Amar Shmuel b'chushe nada uba me'osav yom ve'elech. Provided that you made the neder from that day and onwards, meaning every single Sunday, first day of yard site, you always kept. So therefore, you have no raya that you're going back to the ikar. Could be now because you never stopped keeping it. You always kept it. So you have no raya that you're going back to the ikar. Amar Avina Toshma. Okay, let's get a few halachas. One, we know that one of the chaf dalid manas kahuna is challah, right? You parish after a certain amount of dough, you separate challah, you give it to the kohen, it has a din of truma. Good. Of course, we know there's a din of truma in the crops. There's a din of truma in the crops. That's classic. Called truma gedayla. You separate for the kohen. Then there is trumas halishka, which we spoke out was 3 times a year. They would go ahead after they collected the shkolim, starting Rosh Chodesh Adar and culminating in Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and they would send other ones. 3 times a year they would separate from the 4 knacks in the Beis Hamikdash. That would be called Trumas Halishka. There is a 4th one which is important, very important, and main thing of the on the base. We'll do it now. There's a carbon called the carbon toida. A person, when we bench goimel, right? When we bench goimel for being let out of prison or surviving a trip in the desert or a sickness, when we go ahead and we survive, we bench goimel. So anytime in bench goimel, in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, you were being a carbon toida. Carbon toida was a shlamim with 2 exceptions. One, it can be eaten only for a day and a night, not like a shlamim, which is 2 days and a night. And secondly, accompanying the carbon toida was 4 types of 40 loaves, but which there was 4 types. One was what's called chalas matzos, rekike matzos, revuchin matzos. These were all non-chametz, and the 4th one was chametz, mamish achala chametz. Those 4 types, you bought 10 of each, a total of 40. From each one of those, you would give the kohen. So the kohen would get 1 chalas rekikin or revuchin and rekikin. You get a chalas matzah. Revichin matzah and Rebruchin matzah, and you also get chametz. You get 1 of each, 1 of those. What mat is that ba'achila? The zrika of the dam. That mat is ba'achila. You can eat the what? You can eat that. Okay. So those are the yediyas we have to know for the daf. Says the Gemara. Amar vina toshma. Here's our toshma, not our mesivei, right? Here's our toshma. Kichal. You say that this should be what you have a you have a piece of bread in front of you, you have a kikar in front of you, a loaf of bread, and you say, Kichalis Aroin, it should be like the challah given to Aroin, Ukachuma Sai, and it should be like Truma. It's his Truma, it should be like his Truma, Mutta. Why is it Mutta? Because this is a Davar Rasa. Why is it Mutta? That this is a Davar Rasa. This is a Davar Rasa. Now, what creates the Issa over here? Now, here, guys, let's listen to the Dakas Tikachilik. When it says it's mutter, it means that you made a neder in a dava ha'asa. You made a neder in pig. In other words, chala and truma are like pig. They're not like a neder. Why is that? I call this truma. I call this chala. Yeah. In other words, it's mashma. I created it through my dibur, and the answer is that you did. It was always asar. It's called tevel. You couldn't eat it. Your kriya didn't go ahead and create the issa. The issa was always there. Your kriya designated which part goes to the kohen, but it was always asar. Guys, you hear the difference? Yeah. Okay, one more time. You might think, since you're speaking and saying this is chala, this is truma, it's a dava hanadar, because your dibur is creating the isser. It's not so. Really, even beforehand, you couldn't eat it. It's called tevel. It's mixed together. It's tevel. You couldn't eat it. Elamah, what are we going to say? That your kriya designated which part of this dough will be chala. Which part of this kriya, this pile of grain, should be truma. But in fact, it was always asar. Since it's always asar, it's like chaser, it's a davar asar. Therefore, good, you got it? Guys, good? It's mutta, meaning your hatfasa was in something that is what? That is asr, and therefore your neder is not a neder. Because ish ki either neder, the neder has to be in a dava that you created the asr.
But what if the Kohen made the neder?
What?
What if the Kohen who's mutter in that item made the neder?
Kohen can't eat tevel.
No, but once you designated as challah,
a kohen can't eat tevel, Benji.
Right. Okay, but
a kohen can't eat tevel, but it was asa to him also. In other words, this is asa. Tevel's asa to a kohen.
Yeah, but so you're making the neder before you make the.
No, I didn't. But my dibur did not create the heter for the kohen. It was always asa. Not that the kohen can eat it, because the Torah says he can eat it, but it itself is a davar asa. It itself is a davar asa. The kohen can eat it, especially. I guess lahavda like a guy can eat chaza, but to him it's muta. So you want to say if a kohen would go ahead and say like to me, I don't know. I think it's the loss of beforehand. I think it's a davar rasa to the kohen. So you kohen separating truma. I don't know. I have to give it some thought. Okay. Anyway, what about this? It says truma soy his truma. What about mashma, this other truma that would be asa? Good. Kichalas aroin uketruma sai. If you meant all truma, just say truma. What's truma sai? Hakitrumas lachme toida. Let's say it's the 4 loaves of loaves is the same as loaves. 4 loaves, 4 loaves of bread that you're separating from. Again, you have 40 in total. You're giving him what you're separating. That would be usser. That would be usser. Now, one second, Amid Beis. But Trumas lachme toida laachas rikas damimhu. Trumas lachme toida is after zrika. When can the kohen eat it? Only after zrika. So if you're showing me it's asar, it must be he's being mafis like before. He's being mafis in the state of isar. So let's be poshet ashayla. If you have 2 pieces of meat in front of you, one is what is a kosher piece of meat, and one is a shlomim meat after zrika. When you said zeh kezeh, you're being matvis in what the shlomim was, just like you're being matvis in the trumas lachmei toida what it was, meaning before the zrika. Because when you say it's usher, meaning you're saying that this kikar of bread is like this is usher neder. It must be that it's a dava another, and you're going what it was, not what it is now. So let's be pushed very lumdish shaila, and now we are. Says the Gemara, one second. Ema, let us say kitrumas halishka asa. In other words, what's our inference? It says like Aaron and truma soy. So you know that this truma hakri, truma gedoyle is mutter. Mashma is a truma that's asa, and the assumption is trumas lachmei toda. Don't make that assumption. Trumas lachmei toda also could be mutter. Why? Because you go after this rika. You don't go after what it was before. So what's the truma that's asa that would be a good neder? If you say my money should be like the money that was in or my food should be like the money that was in the Trumas Alishka, that's always usher. It's usher from the time you separated it. That's as soon as you gave it, it's a dava another. This is my dava to give to the Beis Hamikdash is here for the Kabbanis. That clearly is a dava another, and clearly it's asa. But in Achinami, you can't be pushed that question about Zivchei Shlamim. Why? Because we're not speaking about Zivchei Shlamim Taida. Ken Zayin Zivchei Tamishay the Taka would also be mutter. Abel Trumas Lachmei Taida Mai mutter. What would you say? Trumas Lachmei Taida is mutter. So listen, Lachmei Taida because came Trumasai. Now, tell me a bigger chiddush. Guys, which is more clearly asa, the lachmei toida or truma? So clearly, it's a bigger chiddush lachmei toida because there is a sad to say after zrika it's going to be mutter. Truma is always asa. So why did they say kechalas aron utruma soy and just limit it to what truma gedoyla, which is always asa? Extend it. Say, I'll tell you a bigger chiddush. Not only truma is asa, even lachmei toida, which will be permitted after zrikas dam, it's still mutter. You're not going ahead and making a neder in something that is going to be asa. So Fred the Gemara kasha, listen me lachmei toida v'kolshkein truma sai, and for the Gemara hakamash v'lon trumas lachmei toida truma sahi. Go back to the Amid Aleph, guys. Go back to the Amid Aleph. Toshma, kichalis aron trumasoi muta. When you said trumasoi, you know what? Don't limit it to truma gedoyla from crops. Extend it to afilu trumas lachmei toida. In other words, even trumas lachmei toida would be what? Would be muta. Why? Because it's not a dava hanad. It's not a dava hanad. It's always us. Okay. Viba yasema another teretz. I'll tell you why you can't be poished from lachmei toida. Again, what was adiyik? Truma soy is mutter. Trumas lachmei toida is usher, unless we poished that you're going after before what it was. Ema trumas lachmei toida nami koidem zrikas damimhu. Trumas lachmei toida is speaking for zrika. In other words, fellas, what's the tzad? Guys, look at me. What's the tzad to say that trumas lachmei toida should be mutter? Why? Because since it's speaking after zrika and you could eat it, it's mutter. Let's say there is no after zrika. Let's say it's all before zrika. It's all before zrika. There's no tzad to say it's mutter, and therefore really could be aser. And it has no bearing on ashayla whatsoever. Ashayla is contingent upon after zrika. There's no after zrika. There is trumas lachmei toida, and the reason it's aser because it's aser because it's a dava hanada. How is it possible to have trumas lachmei toida before zrika? Truma means the separation of it before zrika. The kohen only gets his four chales after the zrika. How's it possible? So we're going to have an ukimta. We're going to have an ukimta. We're going to zetzerayim, okay? Where you went ahead and you gave the kohen from the dough. So you separated. We're going to see how you could do that. You separated it from the dough, and therefore, as far as our shaila is concerned, it has no shaykhus whatsoever because it's speaking all before zrika. It wasn't anything like shlomim, which is speaking after zrika. Let's see it inside. Hiba yisema trumas lachmei toida nami koidem zrikas damim hu kigayin da'afishinu belisha. You separated it when it was dough. So now, since you gave it to the kohen when it was dough, before it was baked, before it was made, and therefore it's before zrika, therefore there's no bearing on a shaila. So what do we just have to do now? How is it possible to separate and give the kohen before it's dough? What exactly did you do? Now keep in mind, there's 4 types. You have to give them one of each. Good? So the Gemara's havamin is 2 havaminas. One, you mix them all together. You separated. You mixed them. You separated one. You gave one big one. It can't be one big one. You need one of each. Okay, let's say you separated a prusa, you made it and you took a little prusa from one of each. It can't be a prusa, it can't be a particle of, it has to be a whole. So therefore that can't be. So therefore, let's see what it exactly is. Says the Gemara, Chiyod Amar Rav Tuvi Bar Kisna, Amar Shmuel. This is like the din of Tuvi Bar Kisma said in the name of Shmuel. Lachme toida she'afon ba'arba chalos. If you baked them in 4 chalos, in other words, instead of 40, and instead of 10 of each, guys, you made, instead of 40, you made 4. Each one containing the same amount as the 40. So instead of 10 singles, you had one whole, one whole. Like that's, you had one big one, 4 big ones. And then vaksiv arboyim. It says 40. It says one lemitzvah. That's lemitzvah. It's not ma'akiv. You can bake, you can bake big ones. For boiling mishkal truma, how could you go ahead and bake big ones? You have to separate. So if you break 10 small ones, you can go ahead and separate one. If you make one big one, you can't separate. The chik came to the shakal chada rifta, right? Al kula. Let's say you baked 4, you took 1 and gave it away. But tanan echad. The pasuk says v'hikri menu echad mikol carbon. Echad mikol carbon, 1 of each. You can't give 1 for all. You have to give 1 revucha, 1 rekikin, 1 chalas matzah, and 1 chalas chametz. Shalo yito mikarbon al chaveiroi. You shouldn't take one or the other. The chitem with the shakal prusa mikol chad v'chad. You baked 4 chalas and you took a little piece from each one. But tanan echad means it's got to be a whole. Shalo yito prusa. You shouldn't take a part of. Ella, what must happen? It must be that you went ahead and afashina belisha. You went ahead and you separated when it was still dough. You separated it. The shakal chodem mechametz, the chodem mechalois, the chodem in rakikin, the chodem in revucha. And you gave a dough from each one. So it's a whole piece. It's not a prusa because it's not baked yet. But what's the key to our sugya? It's all before Zrika. Since it's all before Zrika, you made a neder in a dava hanadar. The lachmei toid that comes about 3-day neder. There is no tzad, there's no side to say it should be mutter because it's mutter because it's not mutter. The mela has no bearing on a shaila. Trumasai. So trumasai can either mean what? It could taka mean truma could be, it also would be mutter. Trumas lachmei toid, the first teretz. According to the second teretz, it could be speaking about trumas lachmei toid, and it's usher, and it's speaking in it's a dough form before this rika. The dough form of this rika. Okay, let me get tonight. I'm going to go down to a little bit in the next staff tomorrow. Let us suggest that whether you go after what it was or what it is now is a machlokas tanoim. We always do. Remember, chamishayil is machlokas tanoim. Okay, what do we know about a bachar? What do we know about a bachar? A bachar that's born automatically, it's kodesh mirechem. It never had a moment when it was mutter. It's a unique carbon, guys. A regular carbon was chulin, and then you magdash it. Oh, there could be differences, vlad chatas, but again, pashit, you're speaking here about it, but bachar. A bachar is born, it's born kodesh. So it never had a time when it was it was mutter. What happens? What do you do with the bachar? You give it to the kohen. If it has no mum, the kohen goes ahead and he's makriv on the base of Mikdash as a carbon. And that's all we have to know. If it doesn't have a mum, then it's barbecue in his backyard, it's not Nagaya now. Let's see what we got now. Let's suggest that this Shaila of Rabbi Merchama, in fact, is a machlokes Tanoim. Rabbi Yaakov, Harei like bechar. You take an animal, it's upon me like a bechar. This animal or this kikar is upon me like a bechar. Is that so what's the Shaila? Guys, is that a dava hanodar like a carbon and it's asur? Or is it like a dove? It's like chaza, or is it like chaza? What's the tzad? It should be a carbon. What's the tzad? It should be chaza. Let's say Rabbi Yaakov asur. Obviously, Rabbi Yaakov holds it's a dove hanador. Rabbi Yehuda matir. Rabbi Yehuda says it's mutter. Your neder doesn't work because he holds it's a dove or asur. Hechidami. What exactly is the case? Hechidami. Inema lifnei zrika stamim. If he says before the zrika that this alai is like a bechar, my time of demand is shari. Why would you say? What's the reason you say it's mutter? The ila achas rikas damim. My time of demand aser. So in other words, l'chayra, If it's after Zrika, clearly it should be Mutta. If it's before Zrika, clearly it should be Aser. Now, you know, I gave you an insight why it should maybe be Mutta, right? I already told you it's Kaddish Meirachem. Okay, you got a little insight. But again, it's Stadim over here. If it's speaking after Zrika, what's the reason that Mandi Amu says, why would Yaakov say it's Aser? If it's before Zrika, why would Rabbi Yehuda say it's Mutta? Elalav, Amid Aleph, he must be speaking. The Machis Basa Bechar, you took a piece of Basa Bechar, Umachis Basa Deheyach, and you took Basa regular meat, Gabe. V'amar Zeh Kazeh. Mamish our case. Zivkei Shlomim, you took a piece of Zivkei Shlomim, Lachos Rika, put it over here, same thing over here. But Tanoihi, and Samach likes Tanoim. The one who says it's Mutta says why? Because you go after what it is now. The one that says it's Asa, you go after what it was before. So l'chayra, the exact same case, just interchange the word bechar to shlomim, and you could be pushed to the shaila. It's machloikas ta hanoim. Everything will work out. There's no light. The kuliyalma lifnei zrika stamim. It's before zrika, so it's before zrika. You can't be pushed to the shaila. So now it's before zrika. What's the reason the one that says that it's mutter? L'chayra, it's before zrika. It's a davar another, and it's asa. Well, my time of demand is shari. What's the reason the person says it's mutter? Why would it in neder be mutter? You were matvis in the dava asa. Amakra, the pasuk says, Ki yidor, at sheyida bedava hanada, lafuke bechar de davar asahu. As we spoke out, a bechar is innately different than any other carbon. Any other carbon, you went ahead and created the issa by saying harezu or hare alai and separating it. The bechar, guys, is asa as soon as it's born. You didn't do anything. It's not a dava hanador. It is selus chazer. It's therefore before zrika. Every woman hold. So the one who says it's us now, it's a very geschmack. Okay, the one who says it's mutter, I can understand because it doesn't make a difference. The char is always going to be mutter. It's not a dava hanador. But the man the almost says it's aser. Why? Where's the tzad iser? Uman the aser amakra la Hashem l'rabbi's dava aser. It says la Hashem to be marba a davar asa. It says the word Hashem to be marba davar asa. Let's see Taisvis. First Taisvis on the page. Amakra Hashem l'rabis davar asa. Pirish. Davar asa ki hai the bechar. She nechshav ktsas davar hanada ki the mefarish the asa. Pirish. Guys, don't make a mistake. You could possibly think, fellas, look at me. You could possibly think the following. When it said La Hashem l'rabbis davar asa, that this man the is saying, no, you don't need a davar hanadar, even a davar asa. In other words, you could even make a neder comparing it to a pig, right? Like a pig is a davar asa. In other words, you look at the words, l'rabbis davar asa, you might think that this man the Amar who holds what? That it's mutter, like according to Rabbi Yehuda, you might think that what? That any davar asa would be what? Would be mutter. It would be, in other words, any davar asa, no problem. It would be asa. You might think that. No, that's not the case. That's not the case. That's not the case. Places is telling us only by bechor would you say that. L'rabbis bechor. There's no havamina that a chazer. There's no havamina that truma or the second teretz that truma salishka lachmi toida should be what? Should be mutter. There's no havamina for that. Those are things that are, I shouldn't say that. Truma, we say truma is mutter, right? Because say truma is mutter is because it's a davar asa. It's like chazer. There's a special limud by bechor that it's a davar hanada. What's the special limud by bechor? We're going to see in a second that even though when it's born, it's kaddish or mela, there's a mitzvah for you to say that it's kaddish. There's a mitzvah for you to be mitzvah b'piv that it's kaddish. Since there's a mitzvah to be mitzvah b'piv, you might think it's a davar hanadar that's coming out of your mouth. Kamashman, no, kamashman not. So this Tosfos tells us this din is unique what to bechar. Let's see one more time. Okay, so you're telling me it's speaking me after Zrika. Good. After it's before Zrika. Before Zrika, what's the reason the one says that it's mutter? Why? Because it says a davar another, and the bechar is a davar asa. Now the one who says that what it's asa, meaning it's a davar asa. Why is it davar asa? Because it says Lashem l'rabbis. It includes a bechar. L'rabbis means not to include a davar asa. L'rabbis davar asa. L'rabbis a bechar, guys. L'rabbis a bechar. Uman the shari Lashem ayavadlei. What does he do with the riboy? One who says that what that it's a davar asa, it remains a davar asa What does he use Lashem for? What it comes to include? That you could be matfis lechatas v'asham. In other words, I could say the following: if chas v'sholem a person eats chaylev and he's chayim v'chatas, that's not a davar another. He has to bring it. Chas v'sholem, if a person steals and swears falsely that he stole and that admits the truth, he has to bring an asham gazelis. He has to. So I would think maybe that korban is not a davar hanodor because he has to do it. It's mandatory. It's he has to do it. That's what it comes to include. That's still considered a davar asur because the way it becomes a korban is through yedibah, but not a bechor. A bechor would remain a davar ha'asur, and if you're matfis in a bechor, the ned is not a good neder. So that's what the Mandi Omu says, that a bechor is a davar ha'asur. What does he do with La Hashem? Because he says La Hashem is what to teach me that a chatas v'asham that you might think is not a davar hanodar is a davar hanodar. Says the Gemara, Umar rois l'rabis chatas v'asham u'lohoitzias bechor. So why did he opt for that? In other words, he had a choice. I could have included bechor. I couldn't include the chatas v'asham. I opted to go ahead and include chatas v'asham as a davar hanodar and not a bechor. A bechor remains a davar ha'asur. I think it's pretty pasha, guys. A bechor is naturally kaddish. The asham chatas, you had to verbalize it yourself. So, giving my druthers which way to go, I'm going to go in the direction to include chatas for asham as a davar hanodar rather than bechor, which is automatically asur, automatically kaddish. Says no, Maroyas. Why did you see l'rabis chatas for asham l'hoitzi as a bechor? So Mabrani chatas v'asham shu matvis b'neder u'moitzi as a bechor shu kaddish mimei imai. So therefore, I went in that direction. Now, Uman the asa bechor nami matvis b'nederhu, right? Uman who says it's right, the one who says that a bechor is a davar asa is a why do you say that? It's matvis b'neder the Tanya. Mishum Rabbi Amru minayin l'noilid bechor. How do you know if a bechor is born? It's like basically she mitzvah lahagdishay. That's a migdash to be magdashit. Shneimar hazacha tagdish. The zacha you should be magdish. Good. Perish. What's the reason the Manda Omo says if you're matfis in a bechor, it's a davar hanodar? Going back to the sugi, guys. We know that Rabbi Yaakov says it's asur. Rabbi Yaakov holds if you go ahead and compare an animal to a bechor, it's asur. Why? Isn't a bechor kodesh merechem? Isn't it a piece of chazer? And for the Gemara, no, it's not a piece of chazer. Why? Because even though it's naturally kodesh, there's a mitzvah to go ahead and say kodesh. Since it's a mitzvah to say kodesh, it's considered a davar hanodar, and therefore it's asur. Rabbi Yehuda says it's a davar asur. What does he do with the pasuk? It's a mitzvah to go ahead right and be magdash it. And what's the answer? What happens if you don't do it? It's still kaddish, right? It's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to say it, but if you don't, it's still kaddish. So memela, it remains a piece of chazer. It remains as a davar asur. Says, and for the Gemara, says the Gemara, "Uman deshari kilei magdash le mila makdisham when it be kaddish," and the answer is what? Okay, so it's not. So bottom line is, we attempted to go ahead and answer our shaila Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama asked, "What's the din of a piece of shlamim that you go ahead and you take a piece of meat and say it should be like this? Do you say you go after this rika and it's moto? Do you say imafis and ikka carbon?" We attempted to go ahead from our Mishnah to be paishit from nicer. We were not successful. We attempted to be paishit from truma. We were not successful. Trumas lachmi toida. We were not successful. We wanted to suggest the machalakas tanoim. We were not successful. So it remains in a baya d'layivshita. And let's see the Ran for a second. The Ran is on the left side. 4 lines down. L'inyan halacha. L'inyan halacha pirish Ramban b'elchosav. Who right? Then he the ba'ayin hacha l'yivshita. Even though the ba'ayin over here is not pashit, are you going after the ikka carbon or are you going after Srikas Adam? Naktina and the behetera kamatis. We're going to say that he's been matfis in the heter. Why? In the maskina perik mish amar hareini nazir. We're going to see Be'ez Hashem in perik. Someone says he's a nazir. The shama chavero, his friend, he has amar ba'ani and I as well. The besefer matfis v'loy bekama. He's in the end, he's matfis, not in the first. Bein lekula, bein lechuma. Okay, so wherever we're going to see over there that Gemara, I didn't look up the Gemara, but the bottom line is over there, based upon that Gemara, we're going to be kula and say we go after the hetera, we do not go after the iser. Have a great day, everybody.